Hello walkers, we're here in York. This is Britain's most haunted city. And it's also the site of so many bloody conquests. We had the vicious Vikings here, we had the Romans, we had the Normans. Stay tuned. If you want to know where to find the best ghosts, I'm going to tell you the most haunted places here. I'm going to tell you some of its gruesome history. And you know, if you're a Harry Potter fan, stick with us. There's a little treat for you along the way. Thanks for joining us again. We're here in Fossgate. Oh, by the way, look at that building over there, the Merchants' Hall. That is pretty old. That goes back to the 14th century. And there's an adventurers' hall there. So think of the old guilds, play D&D, things like that. You know about guilds, don't you? So, old guild hall down there, just down the alleyway. Go and have a look. It's really cute. I said this place was called Fossgate. Okay, so it gets the word Foss from the River Foss, which is just behind us. It gets the word gate, not because there's a big gate somewhere, no. Gate is a Viking word. Yeah, it means street. Now, just to confuse you, because of the actual gates to the city, well, we can't call them gates, can we? So they're actually called bars. If you come here, you'll see lots of places called bars around here. Fossgate here, this road was originally, so this would have been the sort of southeast entrance to the city, and that would have been for the Romans. Can you imagine? Like the Romans trooping up here in their legionnaires' armour and weaponry. Along here too, by the way, but more recent now, if you're into chocolate, like Roundtree's, okay, big British company in the past before it got taken over. But hey, you know, this is where they started from humble origins. There's a little chocolate factory down here, started in the 19th century. But today, look around you, this is a lovely place to come for something to eat, coffee. It's a lovely introduction to the city, particularly because we're not far from the Shambles, and that's almost directly overhead. We will be visiting the Shambles. You may have heard of them. Stay tuned. There's loads of stuff we're going to see. We're going to learn about violent history. You're going to see all the most haunted places. So when you come here, you can find them out for yourself. And we're just going to learn some weird facts. And there are some weird facts here. But just over there, I'm just going to wait for this bus to go past. So you see a little sign there. Those people are sitting on the wall. A little sign saying Whip Ma What Ma Gate. Very short street sign. Whip Ma What Ma Gate is an extremely short street, possibly the shortest in York. In fact, it's only 80 foot long. There you go, you can just see the sign there. It's an unusual name. It's first recorded in like the 1500s. And we think it might have meant something like neither one thing nor the other street. Makes sense. Another theory also is the whip part might refer to the fact that it could have been the former location of York's whipping post and stocks for punishments in good old medieval times. You can imagine that, can't you? Being tied up there, being whipped in front of everybody. It's not very nice, is it? That's British past for you. Now this here is Castlegate. Castlegate, what do you think that might mean? Well, gate means street, and collier really comes from the charcoal merchants, okay, who used to operate in this area. Now, you'll be pleased to know, there is some ghosties down here. First of all, a couple of buildings, 18 and 19, which is just passing on the right here. Okay, they're probably the best buildings of the street. They're built in 1748, very famous. But up ahead, in a little while, we're going to see the Black Sheep Brewery. Now, the brewery and its meeting rooms is a labyrinth of little rooms, and it dates back to the 18th century. It's got a colourful past, though. It was once a morgue, then it's been a vicarage, would you believe? And now, of course, it's a brewery, which we're going to see in a moment. Staff, though, often report hearing heavy footsteps. Oh, yeah. And it's said that the tables have a queer habit of moving around by themselves. And if this isn't ghostly enough for you, there it is on the right hand side, we're just coming up to it. It's said that there are quite a malevolent spirit stalks the halls. Very tall, very thin, wears a tall hat. Let's make it clear he would not prefer to have people around him. He seems to enjoy shouting and slamming doors. That's what they say. But all these buildings down here, they're all listed buildings, okay? Because again, this is a very old city. This is always a great place to stop. There's always street entertainment going on here. One you see in the background there, York's chocolate history. We're not going to be going in today, but it's quite well known. It's a chocolate museum. It tells the history really of chocolate making in York, particularly, as I mentioned, Rowntree's, which is a big name. They started here. If you go in, you'll learn all about the history of chocolate and its beginnings. Did you know it began in modern-day Mexico? Would you believe it? That's right. And then it spread to Britain and the rest of Europe. Here's another little tidbit for you, by the way. York chocolate. York chocolate. It's not just something to eat. It's also the name of a breed of American cat. So there we are. Don't get them confused. So we're going to follow these people down here. I know it's going a little bit slow at the moment. We're heading down to the Shambles. And you'll see in a moment what's so special. And again, I mentioned Harry Potter. Keep your eyes peeled to see what you think as we just turn the corner. Just down here. See how all the buildings lean in? Well, so the Shambles gets its name from the old Anglo-Saxon word, means Shambles, meaning street of the butchers. That's right. It was once lined with butchers displaying meat. Check out the shops, by the way. You're going to see a lot of magic and Harry Potter themed shops down here. The York Ghost down here. So there used to be quite a lot of butcher shops down here, over 30. Today none of them remain, because there used to be the slaughterhouses just behind them too, which would service them, and they were all shut down. But all these buildings overhang, and why do they do that? Because when you think about it, it wants to keep all the sun off the meat. Or number 10, by the way, which we just, I think we're just passing. Which is number 10? I think we just passed that. It's quite cute. So it's got a little bit of Harry Potter-ness about it. And in fact, if you look on Google Maps, its address isn't number 10, the Shambles. The address is 9 3/4, the Shambles, which is quite cool. But something perhaps also they don't draw attention to is that it's thought to have been the home of someone called Margaret Clitheroe. She was a butcher's wife who was executed in, I think, the 1600s. And she was doing that because she was harbouring Catholic priests. Incidentally, by the way, before she was executed, I believe she had a hand cut off. It was immensely cruel, isn't it? I think you can go and see that, actually. You can go there and see that somewhere. Let me think. I think it's back in, Bar Convent. If you go there, I think you're going to find they've kept her hands and put in a little glass jar or something. Anyway, let's come out here to the market. So these little alleyways that lead into this market are called Snickleways. And here there's loads of stuff to get. So the Shambles has been voted Britain's most picturesque street. Really? Well, at least that was 10 years ago. And so it's connection with Harry Potter there. So people have said, you know what, it's a probable inspiration for Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter books. Now, J.K. Rowling, who wrote the books, has sort of denied this and said, well, at the time, she'd never even been to the Shambles. But, you know, rumours persist. Hello. Hey, mate. How you doing? So this street here, so the Shambles, has been known by other names. I think things like Haymonger Gate, Nedler Gate, and the Great Flesh Shambles. You agree, the Shambles is a little bit easier to say now. So very medieval, isn't it? This is so well preserved here. So, you know, you've got to come to York, really, if you're coming to the UK. So Gert and Henry's here, this restaurant. It's a Grade 2 listed building. The old part of it goes back to the 14th century. And it's been several things: a chemist, an art shop, I think it was a hatter's, some millineries. Now let's head down this way. Quite high there.
I think that's the way everything is.
Old Sandwiches Cafe here, we're just passing, by the way. It's one of the oldest surviving buildings, by the way, on Newgate, number 12. And it's a typical old tenement house, built, I think, in the 14th century, so quite a long time ago. And tenement houses like these, of course, were originally built, they were just like one room upstairs and one room downstairs. And this backs onto the church cemetery. So people lived in very small buildings in the past, and of course there may well have been more than one family. There have been several families there. Hygiene would have been interesting because there were no toilets, so everyone would have been sharing a bucket. What happens to the contents of the bucket? Well, out the window, generally. This area, I think it's called Swinegate. Really old street. This goes way back to Roman times. And this area here, the original settlement here, is called Boricum. So it goes right back to those days. Called Swine Street again because pigs were sold here. There's kind of other interesting things about York that you might not know, by the way. Guy Fawkes. Now, if you're not British, you may not have heard of Guy Fawkes Night. So 5th of November in the UK, everyone has big bonfires and we light fireworks. And maybe if you're really young, you might not know this either, but we used to make an effigy, okay, out of old trousers and jumpers, and we'd fill it up with newspaper, and then we'd stick it on top of the fire and we'd burn it. And that was Guy Fawkes. Okay, so this goes back to like the 1500s. Guy Fawkes was responsible for what they call the gunpowder plot. Basically, he and fellow conspirators all plotted to basically destroy Parliament, and they were doing that by packing explosives underneath gunpowder, and they were going to light it. And Parliament and all the politicians inside would have been all blown to smithereens. It was only perchance that he was spotted, and he met a grisly end, hung, drawn and quartered. Not a nice way to go, I can say. But we still celebrate that day. Guy Fawkes night. So he was born here, and we'll probably pass his birthplace. In fact, I know we will. Now this is nice walking around here because so many shops are still open. And you might think that on our walks like this, we do show you some of the nicer cities in Britain, but this is quite unusual. There are other parts of Britain, and a lot of Britain really, where shops have really suffered. Lots of shops have shut because of online retailers like Amazon, and of course simply because in the UK councils and so on have had their budgets, so rents for shops have had to rise, and just so many people can't afford it. So coming down here, it's lovely to see all these shops healthy and happy. So Lower Petergate then. This is where we are. So York was first occupied, I think it was about 8000 BC. That's right. And again, there's been Romans, there's been the Angles, there's been Vikings here. Well, the word Yorkshire derives from the word Boracom. It's an old name, possibly meaning the place of the yew trees. So you can imagine at one point this was a place where lots of yew trees were growing. We're heading up this way and we're coming to have a look at York Minster. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. As we wander around, keep an eye out. So something that's quite interesting is there are around about, I think it's about 20 cat statues hidden around York's city centre, and are placed on the tops of buildings or on corners. And why are they there? So well, they're a little bit like gargoyles in a way, but it was believed that having the cats up there would frighten away rats and mice. And people knew at that time, they didn't know about germs, but they did know that rats and mice carried diseases. So that was the idea. So keep an eye out. You get a brownie point if you see a little cat statue somewhere.
It feels, it's both ways.
It might be that you've heard of a particular British delicacy called Yorkshire pudding. But if you have, it's not used as a dessert, although pudding in the UK especially normally refers to desserts. No, it's savoury. It's something you'd have with, say, beef and roast potatoes. So it's a batter that's cooked in the oven. And it's an old recipe. It goes back to 1730 something. It was originally called a dripping pudding. So dripping meaning fat. And Yorkshire, the Yorkshire bit, was stuck on the front. Not that long after, probably 10 years or so. We're just heading down this way, and oh, look at this corner. I just love the colours of these buildings. And there she blows. There she is, York Minster. So it occupies the site. So it used to be an important Roman basilica long ago. And we'll potter over and have a look at the statue. There's a statue over there that celebrates Emperor Constantine being proclaimed Roman Emperor in York, then in Boracom. And that was like 300 AD. Just over there, we'll go and have a look in a second. Now, even though it's made of brick, or made of stone rather, the cathedral has undergone a number of fires A religious fanatic named Jonathan Martin, he set fire to Cathedral in 1829. Completely gutted the interior. In 1984, it was struck by lightning. Again, caused another devastating fire that collapsed the roof. There he is. For Constantine. There's so many fires here. 741, 1137, 1840. But it bounces back. The Great Rose Window dates back to 1500 and something. There's over 100,000 tiny bits of stained glass in it, and that really refers to, it was the union of the two great houses, the Lancaster and York. That's where you're going to see a lot of red and white in its design. Central tower of this is over 230 feet high, and it weighs the equivalent of, well, if you think of the jet, jumbo jet, think of 40 of them.
The Vikings did, yeah. No, not just them. No, just people pretending to be Vikings. So they're not.
Now, here there are some ghostly goings on. Oh yes. Apparently in the 1820s, a little tour group, a couple of people got separated and they wandered around and they encountered a man in a naval uniform. The guy approached them and whispered in their ears before wandering off. Story goes, he was actually the person's brother, and they had made a pact together that whoever died first had to come and tell the other if there really was an afterlife. So there we are. Apparently, after dying at sea, the brother returned to keep his promise. Now, another ghost that is said to haunt York Minster is a young man believed to be Dean Gale. He died here in 1700, 1702. Apparently, his ghost has been reported sitting in the pews and listening to the sermons. Costs a lot of money, by the way, to keep York Minster going, so £15,000 a day. It's quite a lot. Now you see the three coloured umbrellas over there, that building there, and you see the pub sign above it. Okay, you might recognise that mask. Okay, it's often been used in films like V for Vendetta. It's used by the Anonymous group. It's said to be the mask used by Guy Fawkes, because that building there is where Guy Fawkes was born, 1570.
Mr. What?
So, I'm going to come across some of the most haunted buildings in a minute, so I'm just going to take a right down here in a sec. Down on Stonegate. Stonegate, well, it's got its name because, well, gate for road, stone. It was probably one of the first paved stone roads in York, and that was probably something to celebrate at the time because that was pretty unusual. And in medieval times, well, you know, we've been lots of glass painters and goldsmiths, printers would have been here. Now 35 Stonegate on the left over here, which is passing in a second. Contains the remains of a 15th century building. It's believed actually it might have been used as a site of pagan rituals. That was before the Normans came here. But it's generally considered as York's most haunted building. Certainly it seems to be there's been a building there for at least 1,000 years, and it's said that there's at least 14 different ghosts that have been seen here, possibly even more. And it might be that they became a bit more active in the late 90s because the property got heavily renovated. Who knows, maybe all that work stirred them up. And here, the old Star Inn. Okay, this is an old kitchen inn. It goes back to 1644. But the cellars are thought to be an awful lot older, and it's the cellars themselves that are the focal point for the hauntings. Many people have reported hearing the screams of royalist soldiers. And not surprising, so if you look at records show that they were actually used as makeshift hospitals for soldiers during the English Civil War. Now, some of the other paranormal activity that's linked to it include the old lady dressed in black who's often seen walking down the stairs from the upper floors, and the 2 ghostly black cats who are seen around the barn. The legend says, and this is, you might not want to hear this, but the cats were bricked up inside a pillar. That's right. See, there was a practice of bricking up cats in a building. It was quite superstitious, but it was hopefully said to protect a building against fire and ill luck. It's not so lucky for the cats, is it, though? And even now, people say they bring their dogs into the bar only for them to growl at one of the pillars there because of the bricked up cats. Now this is a lovely day. So you can walk around some of the highlights of York quite quickly. We're going to have a few walks on York here because there's different areas to explore. Look at all the history seeping out of these buildings. So this is one of my favourite British cities, and it's easy to say that because it's pretty, it's well kept, it's prosperous, gets lots of visitors. I'm taking you up here because I want to show you a little bit of a British institution. Well, at least it's here, and I think the other one we saw was in Harrogate, and that's something called Betty's Tea Room. A lot of people, when they come here, they book a little spot in Betty's, which is coming up here on the left. As you might gather by something called Tea Room, it sells teas and cakes. It goes back to 1919 or so. Now, a lot of people will come here for afternoon tea. That's where you have a big stack of plates that have got various cakes and sandwiches on. That's normally served in the upstairs room, the Belmont room. And the interiors in there are apparently inspired by the famous Queen Mary ocean liner. So quite sumptuous. Oh, you do have to book, by the way. Again, all these buildings just exuding history. So this here we're coming into is Coney Street. So the main Roman road that would have gone through the original city of Boricum would have gone along this route. Now, back in the 12th century, Coney Street here was quite well known for its Jewish population, and that included Aaron of York, and he was considered the wealthiest Jew in England at the time. However, it was not a happy tale really, because in 1190, a lot of Jewish homes here were burned down during what was the notorious York Massacre. That's right. In fact, the city's Jewish community had to take refuge in York Castle. Many of them were killed. Why was that? Well, it goes back to Richard I. So he was crowned king just a year before. And he said, right, I'm joining the Crusades. And this inflamed anti-Jewish sentiment. And rumours spread, as they do, and we all know about that now, don't we? Began to spread that the king had ordered, that the English Jews should be attacked. He never said anything of the sort. Well, that's what happened. Just shows you don't need social media just to spread rumours like that. New Street. Down here we'll find Brown's department store. That's been around since 1900, so fairly old. And at the end, Davy Gate. So Davy Gate originates from a house or a hall that was there. That was owned by David. He was the king's larderer or keeper of the larder. That was back in the 13th century. Down onto Parliament Street. So that's a site, by the way. So that would have been York's main street market, in like sort of 1836 to 1955. And there would have been older houses there and shops that were basically swept away. So today there's quite a few people dressed up in Viking outfits, demonstrating some of the old skills.
Money by entertaining people.
Shambles Market. One of the other entrances. Take a dip through here actually. Hopefully the music won't get picked up by YouTube's algorithm. Remember this, here earlier, slightly different view.
And it was spot on. Sorry.
So we're here in York for a long weekend, and I'd say, that's a good amount of time. So what to do here? A lot of history. This place is just to walk around and soak up the atmosphere. There's galleries. Castle Museum is particularly good fun. They've got an exhibition there which basically has transports you through different eras, all the way back to like sort of the 17th century. So you see how people lived, recreates York's castle prison. You can see just what it was like to be an inmate in the old days, in the original prison cells. Back down here, the Shambles. Potions Cauldron, I think that might be number 10 or number 9 3/4. Oh, there's a guy down here earlier dressed in blue, I think it was, collecting money for, I think it was Ukraine. I think he's been here all day, so we'll see if we see him again. Hats off to the man. Oh, here we are. Yeah, you're right. The shop that must not be named.
Oh yeah, it was quite nice. It was him, yeah. Same guy. It was.
Building over there looks like it's collapsing in the middle there.
The
Tudor looking building, and you know it's Tudor because it's got the black wood with the white in between. That pub over there with the golden sheep just outside, that's the Golden Fleece, goes back to the 16th century, rumoured to be haunted. Most famous spook in there is Lady Alice Packet, wife of the former Lord Mayor, who used to live next door. It's said that there are other ghosts there, a Canadian airman who fell to his death from the upstairs window. What was he doing? I don't know. Was he trying not to get caught? Who knows? And his old one-eyed Jack. The chap who sits there in the bar with a pistol. His old 16th century coat. Bright red. Let's head up here. Highwayman. Again, this follows just one of the main roads that would have led out. Something like this, of course, has got lots of history, so it's not surprising they found evidence here of an old Roman bathhouse, temples nearby. And so you've got to find that most buildings along here are actually dated from sort of 1700 onwards, and simply because there's a massive fire here about 6 years before that and destroyed 30 houses. Imagine along here, so Emperor Constantine, he would have come along this road himself, Roman Emperor. Horse, of course, unhappily would have been the Viking raiders. You don't really want to be on the welcoming end of a group of Viking raiders. That encounter always tends to end badly. Just across the road down here, we're going to find the Jorvik Centre. So it's definitely worth going in. It's a bit like if you've ever done a dark ride tour where you sort of sit in a little seat and it moves around. Well, basically what they've done is recreated a Viking village, complete with all the smells and sounds. Oh yes. But it's really fun. It's really dark, but it's really interesting. And it's I think it's about 1650 when we went in. So that's for adults. So this is Castlegate, by the way. So it used to be a major glass-making district during Roman times. Got abandoned and then really became part of the Viking town of Jorvik. In the 70s, so you know, not that long ago, they uncovered some really well preserved buildings down here back from the sort of Viking era, and it found over like 40,000 artifacts, including something that's famous called the York helmet. So it's an Anglo-Saxon helmet considered one of the best preserved examples. So here it is, York Museum, well worth going in. Something else that those excavations uncovered, of course, was a lot of bodies, well, skeletons, and showing signs of decapitation. So the past was a very violent time. So we think today's violent, but not at all. Every generation sees slightly less violence than the previous one. don't think that chap is part of the museum. I think he probably just wanders around a bit, poses for photographs. So I think up this way is Castlegate. So one thing you certainly notice, lots of places to eat and drink. There's just been so many good coffee shops, because of course I have to mention coffee. I know, can't help it. So I want us to lead us down to the waterfront, to the quay. Stay with us, there's still plenty more yet. We haven't seen the castle yet. The Castle Museum. We also want to see Clifford's Tower. That goes back to William the Conqueror. So William the Conqueror invaded Britain, took it over, part of the Norman conquest. Remember 1066? I've heard of that date. Those kids in the UK have had to memorise that date. Britain has been the subject of so many invasions over the years. So we've been walking around about 50 minutes. A little way to go yet. So stay with us. Now down here. The way down to the quay. It's really nice when the weather's good, as you'll see. Came past here earlier, pretty busy. Everyone's out, enjoying the sun, drink. Just taking King Street down to King Staith. So the quay itself down here was built in 14th century. That's 1300 and something, 1360, 66 perhaps. And it's the main quay for the city, so quay being placed for all the ships to moor up. The street, by the way, still floods. Okay, and in fact, down here, you'll see the King's Arms, and keep an eye out. We might see the little markings of where the floodwater levels are marked. Pretty nice, isn't it? Gets very busy down here. If you've got an outside seat, well, you just have to hang around a bit, wait till someone gets up, and then pounce. Yvonne's very good at that. It's one of her definite skills. She can spot a couple about to leave the table from 300 yards. Little ice cream van here, by the way, on the right. So yeah, if you're not native to the UK, you might not know what that is. That sells ice creams. It's certainly a long time ago. So when I was a tiny little child, ice cream vans would drive around the local streets, especially at weekends, and you'd hear their bells ringing, and you'd go out and you'd buy an ice cream from them. Because a lot of people didn't have freezers. Or if they did, well, you know, maybe they just didn't have ice creams at home. Curiously, where I live in the UK, I've started to hear them back again. So, a bit of a renaissance. Guessing all these apartments looking over the water are going to cost a pretty penny. Anything over the water does. Doesn't matter where you are. Said if you're coming to York, give yourself a few days. You want at least 2 full days, I reckon.
More end though behind it, cheaper size.
So we're heading towards Clifford's Tower. There's a few interesting laws, I think. You find it generally in most countries, don't you, that have been sort of forgotten. Apparently, I think it's still legal. So apparently, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're born in York, okay, you are permitted, you can shoot a Scotsman, that's right, someone from Scotland, with a bow and arrow, from the top of Clifford's Tower. But you have to do it on a Sunday. Of course you have to do it on a Sunday. But apparently, that's legal. Of course, don't take my word for it. I'm not a lawyer, etc., etc. Just past what would have been the walls of the York Franciscan Friary, and this would have been a public washing site right here, so people would have done all their clothes washing. Makes sense really, you're just by the river, there's the access to water. Nice actually to walk under the trees because it has been quite warm. You might not be able to tell that by seeing what people are wearing, but when the sun's out you can really feel it. So that tower, you can see ahead of you, that is Clifford's Tower. So it's built by William the Conqueror. Not himself, obviously. I don't think he probably actually even laid a single stone. No, he was busy conquering. But it was part of York Castle. That was built in 1068, so almost immediately after the Norman invasion. And there's an artificial mound or motte. The tower is built on top. Now, it used to originally be a wooden tower. If you remember, I was talking about in 1190 the attack on the Jewish population here. So the Jews here that were living here fled to the tower for safety. Well, that got destroyed. No point in it. I hear committed suicide rather than renounce their faith. It's called Clifford's Tower because Roger de Clifford rebelled against King Edward II. He was executed for treason by being hanged in chains from the tower walls. That was in the 1300s, early 1300s. The site featured, of course, in the English Civil War back in the 1640s. And the Royalists garrisoned themselves here. They built platforms on the roof, lined up with the guns. But hey, they eventually surrendered to the parliamentarians. So the interior, severely damaged by a gunpowder explosion in late 1600s. It's basically just leaving the outer walls. So also it's particularly white. There's a distinctive pink colouring. That's because of that explosion. It's not always been cared for in the 18th and 19th centuries. It's a bit neglected. Someone even said it was used as a cattle shed. Not sure if that's true, but the government took it over. The York Castle Museum then, that's what we're heading towards. You can see it just ahead of us here. So that was built on the site of York Castle itself. And the actual museum building used to be part of the York prison complex, goes back to the sort of 18th century. It also includes the county jail where, another famous name from British history, Dick Turpin was in prison. So Dick Turpin, famous highwayman, used to rob people in on horseback. He was executed in 1739. As I mentioned though, there's an exhibition here. You can go and sit in some of the original cells and see what it would have been like for people. And in too, there's you can go through the period rooms, and that's going to show you what it's like to live in different centuries. See how people lived in the past. There's also a little Toy Story thing showing you 150 years of childhood toys and games. But for now, I hope that's whet your appetite for York. Hope you make it here. Thanks for joining us. Until the next one, take care.